Boromir tried to steal the most dangerous weapon in Middle-earth, got his friends captured, and collapsed, riddled with 20 arrows, and Aragorn called him a hero. That scene is either everything wrong with cancelling culture, or everything right about grace, and Tolkien forces you to decide which. That's where our story begins, with 20 black-feathered arrows and a fading man's last words. When Aragorn crashes through the trees and finds Boromir slumped against an oak, blood pooling beneath him, the world as Middle-earth knows it changes forever. Scattered at his feet lie the bodies of at least 20 Uruk-hai, proof that even in his final moments, the son of Gondor fought with the fury of 10 men. Boromir's breath comes in shallow gasps. The words spill from him in broken confession. He tried to take the ring from Frodo. The ring showed him visions, Gondor restored, his father proud, armies bowing before him as savior. All he had to do was take it. He grabbed for it, and Frodo ran. And now the fellowship is shattered, and it's all his fault. But Aragorn sees something else. He sees a man who stood against 50 Uruk-hai to save 2 hobbits. You have conquered, Aragorn tells him. Few have gained such a victory. Boromir asks if Aragorn will go to Minas Tirith, if someone will save his city. Aragorn promises. Then Boromir smiles, whispers something about the glory of Gondor, and the light leaves his eyes. Legolas and Gimli arrive moments later, and together they prepare Boromir's body, setting him in an elven boat and pushing him over the falls of Rauros. It's a funeral fit for a king, but there's no time to grieve. Merry and Pippin are gone, dragged away by Uruk-hai. Sam and Frodo have disappeared entirely, taking the ring with them. We live in an age where one mistake can end your career, where social media mobs demand permanent exile for temporary failures. Boromir's story is radical, because it says redemption isn't earned by groveling or public apology. Tours. It's written in blood and sacrifice, in what you do when everything's already lost. That's not fantasy. That's the hardest lesson anyone learns about grace. The fellowship lies shattered on the shores of Nen Hithor. Aragorn stands at a crossroads that would break lesser men. Frodo and Sam have gone east toward Mordor. Merry and Pippin are being hauled north by Saruman's forces. 2 paths, 1 choice, no good options. Aragorn knows what Frodo would want. The ring-bearer chose to go alone, precisely, so the rest could live, could fight, could give him time. Sam is with him, loyal Sam, who dove into the river rather than let Frodo leave without him. The hobbits to the north have no protection. They're prisoners, and they're still part of the fellowship. Aragorn makes his choice. We go after Merry and Pippin, he says, and Legolas and Gimli don't hesitate. 3 hunters against all of Rohan, tracking Uruk-hai that can run day and night without rest. The trail leads north across the plains, marked by heavy-booted prints of perhaps 150 Uruk-hai moving at a punishing pace. For 3 days they run. Aragorn barely sleeps, reading the disturbed earth like a book. Legolas runs with elven grace. Gimli pounds along on his shorter legs, refusing to be left behind. They cover nearly 135 miles, a feat that would exhaust normal men. On the 3rd day, they meet riders. Horsemen crest a hill at dawn, 120 strong, led by Éomer, 3rd Marshal of the Riddermark. His riders have been banished from Edoras on charges of treason. Theoden's advisor, Grima Wormtongue, convinced the king that Éomer was raising an army to usurp the throne. So Éomer rides as an exile, defending borders Theoden no longer cares to protect. The riders encircle the 3 hunters, spears lowered. When Aragorn explains about the hobbits, Éomer's face darkens. He knows exactly which band of Uruks they're tracking. His riders attacked them at dawn, yesterday, defeated every last one, and burned the bodies. No survivors. Aragorn's heart sinks, but Éomer offers them horses anyway. 2 great stallions, a gesture of respect from one warrior to another. The 3 hunters ride west toward Fangorn Forest. They find the battlefield, burned corpses, scorched earth, broken weapons. They search desperately for small bodies. Instead, they find footprints, small ones, leading into the forest. The hobbits escaped. The hunters follow the tracks into Fangorn, an ancient forest where the trees themselves are aware, watchful, hostile to axes and fire. The air grows thick and green, and then they hear it, an old man's laughter, distant and echoing. They spin around, weapons drawn, and there he stands on a rise of stone, an old man in white robes, leaning on a staff, radiating light so bright they can barely look at him. This is Saruman. It has to be. Saruman has found them. But then the figure speaks, and the voice is warm, familiar. Well, met, my friends. I am Gandalf the White, and I come back to you now at the turn of the tide. The light fades, and there he stands, Gandalf, impossibly alive, but transformed. His grey robes are gone, replaced by brilliant white. His face is harder, more severe, but his eyes still hold that ancient wisdom. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Tolkien's masterpiece, hit that subscribe button and join us as we explore the greatest stories ever told. The story spills from him in pieces. He fell with a Balrog through caverns older than Sauron. They fought for 10 days, from the lowest dungeons to the highest peak of Xiraxigil, and there Gandalf struck the final blow. The Balrog fell, broken, and Gandalf perished. But his end wasn't final. He was sent back with greater strength and a clear mission. Gandalf the Grey was patient, gentle, content to guide from the shadows. Gandalf the White has run out of patience. He's seen the other side, seen what happens if they fail. He's no longer the wandering wizard and friend to hobbits. He's the enemy of Saruman, sent to unite the free peoples before Sauron crushes them all. He tells them about Saruman's betrayal, how the White Council's leader turned traitor years ago, breeding his own army of Uruk-hai in the caverns beneath Isengard. But if Gandalf is back from beyond with new power, why doesn't he just destroy Sauron himself? The answer reveals the real war Tolkien is writing about. This was never about magic or armies. It's about whether ordinary people will choose courage when the powerful choose corruption. Gandalf leads them to meet Éomer's riders again, and they ride together toward Edoras, the golden hall of Rohan. Theoden King sits there in darkness, a broken shell of the warrior he once was. He's 71, but he looks 90, stooped, hollow-eyed, trembling hands. Grima Wormtongue hovers beside the throne, whispering constantly, making decisions in Theoden's name. Theoden's paralysis isn't fantasy. It's every person who's been gaslighted by someone they trusted, every leader manipulated by advisors, whispering poison, disguised as wisdom. In 2026, we call it toxic relationships, corporate sabotage, and political manipulation. Tolkien called it Wormtongue, and he knew exactly what he was writing about. This isn't medieval magic. This is every workplace where a manipulator whispered doubt until you forgot your own strength. Wormtongue didn't need sorcery. He just needed access, patience, and a victim who trusted him. Gandalf strides into the hall without permission, and Wormtongue leaps up, shrieking about trespassing. The guards move to intercept, but Gandalf's staff strikes the stone floor with a crack like thunder, and they freeze. He walks right up to Theoden's throne. Gandalf knows that Wormtongue is Saruman's agent, planted years ago to poison the king's mind, weaken Rohan from within. The wizard raises his staff, and light pours from it, revealing, burning away the fog that clouds Theoden's mind. The king convulses, fighting against decades of manipulation. His voice changes, becoming deeper, stronger, speaking Saruman's words. "You have no power here," Saruman snarls through Theoden's mouth. Gandalf's response is simple. "I release you from the spell." The light blazes brighter. Theoden gasps, and suddenly he's sitting up straight, eyes clear, really seeing his hall for the first time in years. He looks down at his withered hands. Someone brings him a mirror. The face staring back is ancient, ruined, but the mind behind it is sharp again. Theoden asks for his sword, Herogrim, the blade that hung unused on the wall for a decade. He holds it with a strength that surprises everyone. Wormtongue is seized, and Theoden stares at the man who stole years of his life. He could execute him. Instead, he banishes him. Wormtongue flees the hall, straight to Saruman, to report that Theoden is free, and Rohan will fight. The king's first act is to restore Éomer. His second is to call for evacuation. Saruman will attack within days. Edoras can't be defended, but there's a fortress carved into the mountains themselves. Helm's Deep, the Hornburg, a place where a smaller force can hold against overwhelming numbers. Theoden gives the order. Every man, woman, and child will ride for Helm's Deep at first light. Meanwhile, far to the east, Frodo and Sam are discovering that traveling alone with the ring is far worse than traveling with the Fellowship. Every step toward Mordor makes the ring heavier, more insistent, its whispers worming into Frodo's mind like parasites. It promises power, safety, and control. It shows him visions of himself as a great lord, commanding armies. It tells him Sam will betray him. The weight on the chain around his neck is crushing his spirit, draining his hope one painful mile at a time. And something is following them. They hear it at night. A coughing, hissing sound, like someone choking and sobbing. Rocks clatter in the darkness. When Sam keeps watch, he catches glimpses of pale hands, bulging eyes that reflect moonlight. The thing stalks them for days. Finally, Sam sets a snare with his elven rope. Then he waits. In the deep of night, something triggers the trap. The rope pulls tight with a screech that splits the air. Rage and pain and terror all mixed together. Sam and Frodo rush over with sting drawn, glowing blue. But this isn't an orc. It's something worse. A creature that might once have been a hobbit, corrupted by centuries of possessing the ring. His skin is pale and clammy, pulled tight over bones. His eyes are huge, lidless, reflecting light in the dark. And he's sobbing, calling the rope, "Cruel, wicked, it burns us." This is Gollum. Once he was Smeagol. Nearly 500 years ago, his friend Déagol found a golden ring while fishing. Smeagol took his life for it within minutes, choking Déagol and taking the ring as a birthday present to himself. The Yuan Tone. Ring extended his life, but destroyed his mind. Because that's what the ring does. It doesn't make you powerful. It makes you obsessed. It turns your wants into needs, your needs into madness. 500 years of that, and you get Gollum. Two voices fighting over which one gets to destroy you first. Gollum is what 5 centuries of addiction looks like. The ring is power, validation, the thing you can't put down even as it destroys you. Frodo sees his future in that broken creature, and instead of disgust, he feels kinship. That's the moment the story becomes terrifying, because we've all met our Gollum, or worse, we've been him. Frodo does something unexpected. He makes Sam release Gollum from the rope. The creature cringes, waiting for blows. Instead, Frodo speaks gently. He knows what the ring does. He can feel it happening to himself. Frodo offers a deal. Guide us to Mordor, and we'll let you live. Betray us, and Sam will end you. Gollum stares at him with those enormous eyes, then nods, frantically. Smeagol will help. Yes, precious. We know the way, the secret ways. Sam hates this. Every instinct screams not to trust Gollum. But Frodo is determined. They need a guide, and Gollum knows paths into Mordor that the enemy doesn't guard. Frodo makes the strangest choice of the entire quest. He trusts the creature that wants to take his life for the ring. Either it's mercy, or it's the ring already corrupting his judgment. The truth is worse than either. Gollum leads them through the marshes of the Fallen, a vast swamp where armies fought and fell thousands of years ago. The bodies never decayed. They're still there beneath the stagnant water, faces locked in expressions of terror. At night, pale lights flicker, corpse candles that draw travelers off the safe paths into deep water where they'll perish and join the fallen. Gollum leads them along narrow trails that are barely solid. Sam nearly loses Frodo here. The hobbits are exhausted, and the lights are hypnotic. Frodo sees faces in the water and leans closer. He loses his balance and plunges into the marsh. Sam dives after him, dragging him back up. Gollum watches with an unreadable expression. For a moment, something almost like concern flickers in his eyes. Then it's gone replaced by hunger as he stares at the chain around Frodo's neck. They emerge from the marshes to see the Black Gate of Mordor, an impossibility of iron and stone stretching between two mountains. Thousands of orcs patrol the walls. Great siege towers stand ready. This isn't just a gate, it's a fortress, and it's completely impenetrable. Frodo stares at it in despair. How are 2 hobbits supposed to sneak through that? Gollum pulls at Frodo's sleeve, whispering urgently. There's another way, a secret way. The Black Gate is for armies, but Gollum knows a forgotten path, a tunnel that leads into Mordor from the west. It's dangerous, but it's the only way 2 small people could possibly enter undetected. Frodo looks at Sam, and they both know they have no choice. They have to trust Gollum, even though trust is the last thing either of them feels. They turn away from Mordor's main entrance and begin the long journey west toward the pass of Cirith Ungol. Gollum leads them through rocky valleys and barren hills, always moving at night, and as they travel, something subtle begins to shift. When Frodo speaks kindly to him, calls him Smeagol instead of Gollum, the creature seems to grow slightly less twisted. Sam sees it and doesn't trust it, but Frodo wonders if redemption might be possible, even for someone as far gone as Gollum. But that question will have to wait, because back in the west, the storm is finally breaking. Theoden has evacuated Edoras. 10,000 people ride and walk through the night toward Helm's Deep. They reach the fortress just as scouts bring the worst news. An army of 10,000 Uruk-hai is marching from Isengard. Saruman has unleashed everything, his entire force, bred for war, armed with pikes and shields and explosives designed to breach walls that have stood for centuries. Helm's Deep isn't ready. The garrison consists of 300 trained soldiers. The rest are farmers and old men, boys barely strong enough to hold a spear. Theoden looks at his numbers and knows they're going to fall here. 10,000 against maybe 1,000 defenders, most of whom aren't warriors. The battle won't last until dawn. 10,000 against 300. Those are the odds every generation faces when they look at climate collapse, political division, economic disaster, problems so massive that fighting back feels impossible. Theoden's choice isn't about fantasy warfare. It's about whether you fall on your feet or on your knees. Don't forget to share this video with any Tolkien fans in your life. They deserve to relive this epic tale with us. Aragorn doesn't argue. They're outnumbered, outmatched, and out of time. But retreat isn't an option. The Deeping Wall is the only barrier between the refugees and annihilation, so they prepare to fight. Warriors distribute weapons to anyone strong enough to hold them. Old men receive swords they haven't touched in 40 years. Boys as young as 12 line up to receive pikes. No one has any illusions about their survival. This is a last stand. Then Elrond's sons arrive, Elladan and Elrohir, riding at the head of a small force of elven warriors from Lothlorien. Haldir of Lorien leads them, carrying a bow that has defeated more orcs than most men have seen in a lifetime. 200 elves, sent by Galadriel to honor the ancient alliance between elves and men. It's not enough to change the math significantly, but it's something. The defenders feel a glimmer of hope. The Uruk-hai arrive at sunset. They don't charge immediately. They simply stand there in perfect ranks, filling the valley, beating their weapons against their shields in unison. A thunder that shakes the stone. Then, as darkness falls, they roar and surge forward like a black wave. The siege of Helm's Deep has begun. The elves fire first, arrows streaking through the darkness with impossible accuracy. Uruks fall by the dozens, but there are too many. They reach the walls and raise ladders, climbing over their own fallen. Aragorn fights like a demon, Andúril flashing, striking down every Uruk that reaches the top of the wall. Legolas puts 4 arrows in the air before the first one lands, each one eliminating its target. Gimli swings his axe with brutal efficiency. The defenders hold, but barely. For every Uruk they defeat, 2 more take its place. Then the Uruks bring forward their secret weapon, explosives packed into the drainage culvert at the base of the Deeping Wall. A single Uruk sprints through a hail of arrows and throws the torch. The blast is deafening, a column of fire that tears a hole in the wall 20 feet wide. Uruks pour through the breach. The wall is compromised, the courtyard is breached. Theoden makes the call. Fall back to the Hornburg, the inner fortress. They retreat in fighting order, every step contested. The Hornburg's gates slam shut just as the Uruks reach them. They've bought maybe an hour, but they're trapped now. When those gates fall, there's nowhere left to run. Aragorn finds Theoden standing in the Great Hall, staring at the coming dawn. The king looks defeated. His people are falling outside. His fortress is failing. Aragorn speaks quietly. Ride out with me. Ride out and meet them. It's not a strategy. It's desperation and pride. If they're going to fall, they'll fall as warriors, not as cornered animals. Theoden stares at him, and something of the old king returns. He calls for his horse and his crown. If this is the end, he'll meet it as a king. At dawn, as the Uruks prepare to smash through the gates, Theoden and Aragorn lead a charge out of the Hornburg. 100 horsemen against thousands. It should be impossible. But as they burst into the valley, horns echo from the hills. Gandalf has returned, riding at the head of 2,000 Rohirrim, led by Éomer. They charge down the hillside like an avalanche and smash into the Uruk rear flank with devastating force. The Uruks break, fleeing in panic toward Fangorn Forest, and then the forest itself moves. The trees stand up, ancient Huorns, awakened by the Ents. They surround the fleeing Uruks, roots breaking through the earth, branches reaching down. By the time the sun fully rises, not a single Uruk remains. The Battle of Helm's Deep is over. Rohan has survived, barely, and in the distance, smoke rises from Isengard. Speaking of impossible victories, if you haven't commented yet, tell us, could you survive a night at Helm's Deep? Let us know below. While Helm's Deep burns and bleeds, Merry and Pippin are having an entirely different adventure. They escaped the Uruk-hai during the battle, crawling into Fangorn Forest while chaos raged behind them. The hobbits stumble through the forest until they meet something impossible, a tree that walks and talks. Treebeard is an Ent, one of the shepherds of the forest, created to protect the trees from those who would destroy them. He's 14 feet tall, with bark-like skin, eyes that glow green, and a voice that sounds like wood creaking in the wind. He's also incredibly old. So old he remembers teaching the elves their first words, remembers when Fangorn stretched from mountain to mountain before men and axes carved it into fragments. Treebeard is slow. He speaks slowly, moves slowly, thinks in centuries rather than minutes. When Merry and Pippin try to explain about Saruman, Treebeard listens for hours before responding. "Now, don't be hasty," he says. Hasty to an Ent means making a decision in less than several days. But the hobbits are persuasive, and more importantly, they're honest. Treebeard calls an Entmoot, a gathering of all the Ents, to debate what should be done about Saruman. The meeting takes 3 days. They discuss Saruman's betrayal, how he was once a friend to the forest, then turned destroyer. He cut down groves that had stood for thousands of years. He burned entire valleys to clear land for his armies. Trees that remembered the first sunrise reduced to ash. The anger among the Ents grows slowly, but when it finally reaches the boiling point, it's explosive. The decision is made. The Ents will go to war, not to help men or elves, but to punish the one who hurt the forest. Treebeard leads them toward Isengard, dozens of Ents striding through the forest, waking Huorns as they go. These Huorns are trees that aren't quite Ents, not fully aware, but capable of movement, capable of terrible vengeance. They follow in a vast tide of living wood. When they reach Isengard, Saruman's fortress seems impregnable. High walls surround it, gates of iron, Tower of Orthanc rising in the center. But the walls weren't built to stop a forest. The Ents tear into them, like they're made of paper, stones flying, iron gates bent and broken. The orcs try to fight back with fire and arrows. But how do you stop a tree that's been alive for 4,000 years? The arrows are pinpricks. The fire is painful, but not fatal. And the Ents are furious. Treebeard does something unprecedented. He breaks the dam. Isengard was built on a river, and Saruman diverted it to power his forges. Treebeard tears the dam apart with his bare hands, and the river comes roaring back. Water floods Isengard, drowning the fires, filling the pits where Uruk-hai were bred, swallowing Saruman's laboratories and war engines. Within hours, Isengard is a lake. The Tower of Orthanc stands in the center like an island, and Saruman is trapped at the top, looking down at the ruin of everything he built. Merry and Pippin sit on the broken gates when Gandalf arrives with Theoden and the others. The reunion is joyful and absurd. Here are the 2 hobbits everyone thought were gone, sitting on the ruins of Isengard like they've just finished a picnic. The wizard is defeated, his army destroyed, his power broken, but Saruman still has one weapon, his voice. When Gandalf confronts him on the tower, Saruman speaks, and his words are honey and reason. He offers apologies, promises of alliance. His voice makes everything sound reasonable. Even Theoden wavers, considering mercy. But Gandalf isn't fooled. He offers Saruman one chance to surrender his staff, to give up his power and be judged by those he betrayed. Saruman refuses with contempt, and Gandalf breaks his staff from a distance, a crack of white light that shatters the wood and strips Saruman of his position. Saruman retreats into his tower, no longer a wizard of the Order, now just a bitter old man trapped in a stone prison of his own making. Wormtongue is with him, locked in a tower with nothing but time and mutual hatred. But that's a problem for another day. For now, the West has won a great victory. Helm's Deep held. Isengard fell. Rohan is free. The two towers aren't buildings. They're Orthanc and Barad-dûr, Saruman and Sauron, two powers that look unbeatable until someone refuses to kneel. Theoden chose to ride out. The Ents chose to fight, even after millennia of isolation. Merry and Pippin stumbled into a forest and convinced trees to go to war. And somewhere in the wasteland, east of everything, Frodo keeps walking, even though the ring is consuming him alive, because the smallest person can change the course of history if they just refuse to stop. Tolkien wrote this in 1944, while bombs fell on England and fascism swallowed Europe. He knew what it felt like to face impossible odds. He knew what it cost to keep fighting when hope was gone. His son was fighting in the war. His friends were falling. The world was burning. And he wrote about hobbits who kept walking, kings who kept fighting, and trees that remembered what the world was supposed to be. He knew that the real heroes aren't the ones with magic swords or divine intervention. They're the ones who take one more step when stopping would be easier. The main war hasn't been won, merely postponed. Sauron still sits in his dark tower. Frodo and Sam are still out there, carrying the ring toward almost certain end. The Fellowship remains broken, its members scattered across hundreds of miles, hoping against hope that somehow, impossibly, they'll all survive long enough to see this war through to its end. That's not escapist fantasy. That's a field manual for surviving 2026. That's J.R.R. Tolkien's The Two Towers, a story that refuses to let you hide from the hardest questions about redemption, sacrifice, and what it costs to keep fighting when the world tells you to surrender. If this hits you the way it hit us, subscribe to keep exploring the greatest books ever written. We're building a community of people who believe stories still matter, and you belong here. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment telling us which moment from The Two Towers changed how you see the world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.